out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Ryan.
Hi, hello, and welcome everyone to episode, can you say it with me, Tim? Episode 50.
Yay!
Of Dismembering Horror. We made it, Tim. The podcast show where myself, Ryan McDuffie.
Oh, and myself, Tim Aslin.
Well, we dismember a horror movie every week, every Thursday, in fact. And what does it mean to dismember a film?
Watch a film.
Yes.
Talk about a film.
Yes.
Say what worked.
Yes.
Say what didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Make some notes of things. I mean, some things of note.
Exactly.
That's it.
And we find, well, we like to see what we haven't seen for a while. Our favorite is stuff you've suggested that we watch. And we're all, we're on the hunt, not for the shunt, but for great horror films we haven't seen before. And I feel like we got to recap, Tim, with why we aren't watching the film that we pulled last week. You may or may not have noticed.
That's right. Well, because we can't find that film anywhere. That's the answer.
One Cut of the Dead was supposed to be available on Shudder sometime soon, hopefully. They have the rights. It was a while ago we added it to the list, but it's not available anywhere except for like British Blu-ray. So
yeah,
we're unable to watch it. So we thought we'd jump ahead, and since we love doing listeners' suggestions but don't have a whole lot now, we're just going to use this special episode 50 to skirt the rules a bit and do this film Society, which was requested by our listener, Dr. Williams. That's all I will call him.
Wow. Dr. Williams.
Mm-hmm. Requested.
Right.
Would love to hear us talk about Society. Oh. So that's what we're here to do today. And we'll pick up One Cut of the Dead when it's available. Mm-hmm. Part of the Beverly Hills social elite, perhaps.
Oh my God. Let's hope not.
I know. I hope not, too.
Well.
Yeah, anything else to talk about? Catch up from the times before, Tim? Anything you want to reflect on briefly with the 50 episodes?
Well, when I was listening or re-listening to the Midsummer episode, I had a revelation about one extra layer of, sort of thematic things that were going on, which was the idea that we almost talk about it, but we didn't quite get to this one extra thing, which is the people from the outside coming into this world and then being upset that these other people are choosing or like being the ones who are saying, we get to decide when you die.
Mm-hmm. And
that's a horrible idea as a concept to the outsiders. It is the same thing that Danny's sister does to her parents, where she says, I'm going to control when you guys die, like your fate. And I was like, oh shit. Yeah, of course that wraps back around.
That's cool. And it's cool. And I gotta wonder, like, I remember thinking during the beginning of the film when that was all happening does this somehow connect more in like a more sort of literal, non-literal way, I guess, to what's going on as far as the sister and the parents' occurrence. Like, because I don't know, it just felt like there's some undercurrent of connectivity that was, maybe more than just a little thematic connectivity. Like, I don't know, it was at least planting those questions of like, is the sister involved with this? Is that going to be a twist or
right?
Something?
Well, I think it's at the end of the day, at the very least, it's Danny almost taking on the same role that she's grieving that her sister took on, of like deciding who dies.
Mm-hmm.
And she makes, she decides that Christian dies.
Mm-hmm.
And like she participates in this quote unquote ritual, which is what the sister does. I mean, that thing, like all of the tubes and the asphyxiation, that's a ritual death.
it makes it that much more tragic that what destroyed her and led her there in the first place is exactly where she ended up herself.
Yeah. I was like, oh, that's good. That's smart.
That's
Shit,
enough just to
dude.
do it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So I was like, oh, how did we glaze over that? But there's so much that it's
As
like,
we
of course
said,
we did.
we could have talked for 5 hours.
Yeah,
Which
we would have gotten there probably.
I think we can do with this film too, Tim.
No.
If not 3 hours.
Ugh. Ugh. God.
What? Well, let's get into it then.
Okay. Wait, did you say what we watched?
No.
Oh, good.
No, I haven't.
Well,
Because we haven't watched the trailer yet, and that's when we say it. Well, we're watching the film. No, I said it. I said we're watching Society when I said,
yeah.
yeah,
okay.
Dr. Williams requested it.
Yeah, so 1989, but came out in 92's Society.
Sounds like was maybe released in Europe briefly in 89, because it still has
film-
that demarcation
in a
date.
film festival for sure.
Okay. Well, it definitely feels more. It somehow feels exactly that.
Yeah.
Those 3 years.
That's right.
Okay. Well, should we watch the trailer
Yeah.
and then really get into? All right. Trailer for Society.
For Bill Whitney,
I've never been paranoid.
fear plays a large part in family life.
I feel like something's gonna happen. And if I scratch the surface, there'll be something terrible underneath.
He's afraid his sister
Could you zip me up, Billy?
is not what she seems.
God, Bill, what's the matter with you?
He thinks his friends are out to get him.
You make waves, Whitney, you're gonna drown.
People are what they are. Now you have to learn to accept that.
He's about to find out the truth.
Why are you guys doing this to me, huh?
What, you've been living with these people all your life and you didn't know anything about this?
Is far worse than he could ever imagine.
If you don't follow the rules, Billy, bad things happen.
Didn't you know, Billy boy? The rich have always sucked off low-class scum like you.
Uh-oh, Billy.
Clarissa?
Oh boy.
What does that mean?
I just feel like there's a movie that could have been made by somebody really good at making movies in this movie. But
I want to. I think.
it just
I think something I wanted. Maybe
Oh,
this can
man.
be a through line, but I definitely wanted to. I think this could be a fun way to end the episode. Is to talk about how we would remake it.
yes. I had that thought a few times while we were watching, and I was like,
Me too.
oh,
So here's to get to my rating.
yeah.
Here's my thing with all that, though, is as much as I have my own take on this and want to change everything to make a different movie, I wouldn't want to change anything about this movie.
No, I get that. Yeah,
I-
it's its own thing.
Timothy Aslan.
God, here we go.
I don't I don't see how I can give this film anything less than a buy it.
Oh my God, you're a fucking madman.
Just like screaming Mad George.
Oh my God, it's so fucking bad though. I get it. But
Where
it's so bad.
how is this not like one of the best stories ever committed to a film?
I mean, I can almost get behind that it is a good story. That's what I'm saying. And it's like, if you remade this, there's
Yeah.
a lot there to
Right.
dive into.
But this is still the story fully on display and giving us beats of this story displayed.
That's fine, but so is Hamlet. But people do that horribly all the time.
Right. Well, and I think this is
This is not Hamlet, by the way.
no, this is better.
I mean, it
in-
is kind of Hamlet.
At least in my eyes, you know what? Yeah. I never been able to. I can only appreciate Shakespeare from afar. I'm always
Sure.
like 10 sentences behind.
Yeah.
Why are we comparing Shakespeare? Because you said. But here with this film, and this is I think our key difference I've noticed in our
You think?
taste overall these films is I have a deep, deep love and appreciation for camp and kitsch.
Yeah, and I'm really it's such a fine line for me.
Yeah.
Like Evil Dead 2 camp, okay. Society camp, no. We watched something, like Evil Ed.
Yeah. We both hated that.
Yeah, that has a level of camp and, that I'm just like, ugh.
That had like, okay, Evil...
Except for when he slam dunks the head in the trash can.
Evil Ed, though, it was, for me, it's, even though, you could say it's camp, it was mired and trapped behind, it was never going to get anywhere because it was too busy only idolizing other films.
Yeah.
The filmmakers love this film and this material, you could tell.
Yeah.
That's like the core difference that makes me like uncomfortable with Evil Ed and on board with this.
Okay.
So that was my rating, Tim. I'd
crazy.
buy it just so I could show it to people who haven't seen it too. That's why I'm as far as buy it.
That is cruel. Just cruel that you would make somebody
I want to watch the document. I want to listen to the commentary. All in hopes maybe I think we could remake it someday in a very different take. If he doesn't do the sequel first, which we'll talk about too.
Oh no. Yeah. So God. Would I avoid this?
I don't know. I feel like this movie could grow on you, Tim. I think this movie grows on it. By the way, I liked it way more a second time. Like, I liked it the first time. I was intrigued by it, but I was probably a high stream, low rent this time around, though.
You know what my problem is? Aside from the fact that there's a bunch of things that I just don't like bad acting and bad directing, and just kind of, there's some stuff that is disjointed. We'll talk about all that, but I don't know what I was gonna say.
Your rating.
My problem with it.
I don't disagree with you about those aspects, but for me, it's like there's such an endearing, specific vision on display, that overrides, that comes through enough in the directing and handling.
Here's what it is. Yeah. I think it doesn't pay off in the right way for me to be like, that was all worth it to get to this. Mm-hmm. So
like the first hour of the film doesn't.
Yeah. So, I'm not an avoid, but I don't think I can can I justify renting it?
I mean, we have
for me. Right. I guess
wouldn't you want to rent it just for the end?
That's why I'm conflicted, is because it didn't quite land I mean, on its surface, yes. But when I think about it, I'm like, but that's just a bunch of funny effects. Like, it didn't feel like it paid off the way I might have wanted it to.
When the moment happened where he was like, now we'll get to the bottom of this, and his hand goes up his bottom and out his mouth, I thought, I was secretly hoping that this was the moment that Tim decided he'd own this film.
No.
Because you've said that before about something else. We're like, if that had... in Dolly Dearest, where it was like, if she had crawled up his butt and come out of it.
Oh, shit. We
gotta go here, Tim.
I'm a stream.
Okay.
I'm a stream. Fuck. Yeah.
Well, maybe you'll change it later.
Maybe.
Okay, stream it. Okay. Let's do our summary.
Okay. Well, it's kind of in that trailer. It's like Billy lives in Beverly Hills. He feels like something weird's going on with his family. He's got a therapist who he doesn't trust. And he's like seeing shit.
Yeah. Well, I like this term's applicable. I think I read this somewhere and I have it written down here probably, but it's, part paranoid thriller for sure, which I love.
Yeah.
That's, it's sort of we do kind of just have this weird collage of like, what are why do we even have these scenes kind of thing of like,
A little
why is he
bit,
at
yeah.
the beach now? I don't know, but it's
There's slight connectivity
yeah,
to it.
there's just enough of like doling out the clues of, I don't know. And actually, no, saying it, there's plenty of it. Like we get the tape reveal. He goes, they mix up the tape. There's the running stuff at the school. There's the old girlfriend and the new girlfriend stuff going on.
Yeah, there is an overarching thing of, is this just in his head? Is he going crazy?
And we never really,
And that, yeah.
for being someone so unlikable, I actually sympathize with him because of his plight of like, am I going crazy or not?
Yeah. But
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what's
Okay.
the bulk of the film, you know?
it's and then this happens.
Mm-hmm.
But it's connected, but it's not, it's lacking the kind of reversal type stuff where it's like he's led in one direction and then it turns on him. It's all kind of linear leading to this thing.
Which is, which also works well as far as though we definitely feel there's this, what is this mystery going to be? What is this payoff going to be?
Right. Yes. But you know what? There's sort of, why are we getting into this? This is a summary.
Yeah.
So ultimately, yeah, the vague mystery
Right.
of, is he crazy or is there something going on, leads him to discover that something is going on, which
Yeah,
is
right.
that everybody in Beverly Hills that's like social elite or whatever that he's surrounded by belongs to this club. What would you call them?
Class, yes.
Like it's almost Eyes Wide Shutty. It's this secret
The
society.
police are involved,
thing.
connections in
Yeah.
Washington.
And what are they?
That's one of the cool, I think,
They're-
Lovecraftian things about it.
True.
As far as what they actually are. They're not aliens, they say.
They're not aliens. They're a metaphor for rich people who
As they say, suck off.
off society or
poor.
the poor.
Anyone not in the 1%.
Right. So there you go. That's
Yeah.
the summary. And then he, wins, sort of.
Kind of.
He gets away.
Yeah. Well, okay. Usually, I've got a lot written down from other things for this because I think this is a movie where people are interested and I'm interested in sort of like really getting into the mean bones of, so what is this movie? So to sort of like as a jumping off point, I did want to read to try to figure out what the tone of this was, which I think is really interesting. If it's all right with you, I wanted to read a couple like sort of bits of some other reviews describing what the film like is, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. So from Slant Magazine, nothing in the film is meant to be conventionally realistic as it luxuriates in a heightened, overheated, parodic, parody zone that suggests a cross between a deranged soap opera and a reliably crass and insidiously conformist John Hughes film. Agree?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Fangoria interview with the director, writer, producer Brian Yuzna, or no, because developer, he didn't write the original script. Or no, I think this is not what he said, but them, the Fangoria talking about it. Simultaneously, a searing satirical comment America's Great Class Divide, a campy send-up of teen melodrama, a paranoid thriller, and thanks to an unforgettably icky finale, one of the goopiest genre flicks ever made. On first viewing, it's almost too much to take in. The tone and pacing slingshot all over the place before arriving at a sexualized latex horror finale, ripped from the fertile imagination of makeup effects guru Screaming Mad George. And then lastly, sorry, it's a bit bulky, but this is from the director, Brian Yuzna himself. I think it's good context for our discussion here from the same Fangoria interview. We tried to make everything in the movie insane, Yuzna humbly stated. I always tend to film my movies with irony because that's just my sense of humor and point of view. I don't like to play things straight. There's always a little edge or twist somewhere. Most of the audience won't get it. They'll think it's awkward or stupid, but I find it funny. I think I was influenced very strongly and early by Mad Magazine. That's where I learned about satire, and it never left me. It's my way of entertaining myself, or maybe just a bad habit that I can't shake. I always like to have a little snide comment in my movies. I'm not sure where a lot of that comes from, but I know in society so much of it was just a result of giggling while we were making it. I'm not always sure what we intended to be, what we intended to be a joke and what just turned out accidentally funny when I'm done with my movies, but some things are very clear. I certainly think the craziness and wildness of the shunting works just as well today. But that comparison to Mad Magazine, I think, helped a lot, you know?
Yeah. It is a very specific type of humor, like Mad Magazine
right.
specifically, that I never could get into. I was like, this is dumb.
I know some of our listeners are big fans of Mad Magazine, and we're just recently lamenting its demise in print.
Well... yeah, it just doesn't work for me.
So it's funny you say it's just dumb, but then I could hear people saying what they love about it is it's dumb.
I think that's my point, is that type of humor, that quote-unquote dumb humor, does not appeal to me. So that is a pure taste thing, where it's like, you saying that's the director's point of view, I get this weird reaction of like, well, I don't know. I don't know how to describe this. It feels kind of almost flippantly a middle finger to the audience in a weird way. Because it's like, well, I don't care. They're not going to get it anyway, but it makes me laugh, so fuck them.
I don't know. It's hard because it's, for me, like in film, you want to like... all you really have to fall back on is, well, your own subjectivity and what you're coming up with on set. Like, you know, whenever we hear about, oh, how was that great, memorable moment come up with? It was just some sort of, you know, spark of inspiration, whether the actor is someone on set, whatever, you know. So I don't know. It's a hard thing to. I mean, that's the difficult thing of filmmaking, is knowing when is this right for the thing.
Yeah.
But,
I guess it's like when a filmmaker acknowledges that they are dismissing whether or not the audience will like it, like that's a really fine line for me of like then why are you doing it? Mm-hmm. You know, because it's really touchy, because sometimes that's right, like that can result in something that everybody loves, and sometimes it feels to me a little self-indulgent and a little like,
I just feel like
flippant.
That's always
it's
when you look at, you know, advice from filmmakers to future filmmakers, it's always you have to do what you love, and then that's how you find your people, you know.
I agree, but if you're doing what you love and almost actively throwing it in the face of the audience, I feel like that's where it can get
But I don't think
touchy.
It's the only people it's throwing anything in the face of with this. I don't think it's not including anyone in on the joke except for, you know, the super rich, who, if they have a sense of humor, I think would love this film.
Story-wise, I agree, but sort of to what he's saying, where he's like, I didn't really care if people thought it funny because we thought it was funny on the set. It's that attitude, I think, can slip into a dangerous territory of just like a middle. It's just like, I don't give a fuck.
Right. Well, that's, I think, an example of that.
It's a very fine,
like the weird
balance or line.
Man, woman, child, mother who doesn't speak and has the hair fetish. Like, yeah. I think that's a good example of what we're talking about, where you're like, where did this come from? It must be that's an example of what was making them giggle on set.
Yeah.
And that, for me, like, on the second viewing, like, the first time, I was just so kind of like the set, I don't know what to think of it. But this time, it just became this weird just piece of this movie that's sort of like, I don't know, it's just a part of it for me now, and I love it. And I've gotten over not being able to like explain or justify it. I'm just kind of along for the ride, and it kind of makes the movie what it is.
Yeah.
And I love it for it.
Yeah.
But I can see how like weird and off-putting it is too.
Right.
But
I think that's...
I just go like, okay, but that's what it is.
Yes. I think that's that acceptance of it is the line. It's like, am I willing to accept that they're just being almost potentially arbitrarily weird for the sake of that?
Yeah.
And often in life, I am put off by people who do that in life.
But it's like though,
like I'm just gonna be a weirdo because it's
Right.
like it's like the one time I met John Landis's kid.
who just all that recent shit came out about.
Yeah, he's had some really bad sort of PR to say the least. But what's his name?
I don't even want to say his name. I know.
Yeah.
It.
Anyway, so I met him at like a what do you call that? Sort of like an opening of a store kind of thing. This like, you know, where a bunch of, you know, Hollywood people show up and like rub elbows and talk about whatever. And he made a point to sort of make himself both the center of attention by being really, he made himself the center of attention by being as awkward and actively awkward as possible. And I was like, you're doing a thing.
Right. Well, see,
what are you doing? You're doing it to make people feel weird, and it's...
But when a person does that in service of themselves, they're a narcissist, which he is.
Yes.
But when it's a person doing that in service of a film, it's on behest of the film.
So that's my point, is that it's the line between when I see that in real life and people doing it, it's very off-putting to me. And so when a film is doing it, I'm like, my knee-jerk reaction is sort of the same, where I'm like, oh, I hate people who do that. But then I'm like, but it's also not...
Imagine this film as something that just exists beyond people making it, you know, which is really hard to do. But I think that's when we're in our best movie viewing mode.
Yeah.
And then also just, I guess, just kind of you're talking about the weirdness of like the woman in it, the mother character, as an example. And like how you go in reacting to that. I think since the beginning of this film, which maybe we should just get into what worked, but to continue the back and forth, it starts off where it's like it's a dreamy setting. It's like that has the scene where he bites into the apple and is like being stalked with a knife, and like he says it's a dream, and you're like, wait, is this still the dream? Like all that stuff just sort of puts me on the ground of, okay, anything goes.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
But should we get into what worked?
Let's.
What worked?
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
Well, I clearly probably have more than you, Tim. Okay, well, let's start broad.
Yeah.
As I already said, story.
Yes. I agree.
Great.
It's essentially a detective noir film, like essentially.
But this is what's the mystery of it is. What's the heart of it? What's the plot? Is just not plot as in plot of the movie, but the evil plot.
Right.
It's just my favorite thing ever. Like it's to have that.
What's another example of this? Like that's like considered amazing
of this that, kind of surreality horror, the body horror,
like Jacob's Ladder.
I don't know.
Or
maybe
Cronenberg must have a movie that's like this.
I just feel like it's probably exists more in fiction and written fiction.
That's true, yeah.
Literary fiction. That's, I think, again, why I feel so hold this film in such a high regard, is it seems like, oh, this is a movie that I've always wanted to see, like, as far as this story being told.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you know that going in though? Like the first time, it's like,
I mean, it's called Society, and it's about So the interest was there from the get-go for sure. But then I think that it just pushes it as far as taking these Beverly Hills elite, and like I use this word a lot, like cathartic to me about the story. This kind of story is you have this like presentation of these elite who like. They like you see them trapped in their own this is what we aspire to, this is the end all, kind of, what am I trying to say?
I don't know.
There's a facade that like we observe, like when we see kind of like the stereotypes that is portrayed here of rich people, but we know just as being human that isn't some sort of end all realistic full 3-dimensional portrayal of a person. So just to have that extreme of like, okay, well, since this is clearly what they're putting on, what is the underbelly that they're not showing, and then the sort of that as the metaphor for this film of, well, they are an extreme, crazy, sadistic, murdering sex cult, like that as sort of the other side of their coin. That is the side that we're seeing so obviously. Yeah, it's the metaphor, right? And I guess to bring back, it's what's I find cathartic is just sort of showing that like, okay, what maybe people sort of in a certain regard think is some sort of end all happiness of getting to this social elite and then you've won the game, how that's like if anything that we've learned from life fiction, whatever we should know is that isn't true, right? so anything that just sort of shows that so clear, I love. Yeah. that worked for me. Well, that's good. I think I agree, but how do I agree without counterpointing that? Well, maybe to tie this into the other thing I loved about, which I've already said, is the camp value. Right. Like, I don't think you can make a film like this anymore. It's unique to that late 80s, early 90s era. Right. Whether that be the effects... I think the quality, like the literal tonality of the music and sound, the actors and how they look, the sort of cringe factor of a lot of the humor of like she's spraying a suntan lotion on their face, like. Oh my God. You are literally listing off my list of things that didn't work. But again, that's why I tried to start with this idea of camp. I know. How would you define camp? Oh, man. That's a good question, actually. Over the top, bordering on caricature, and taking behavior taking things that make sense in sort of normal life, like that people would do, and turning them up to like 200%. So like this, the squirting of the suntan lotion, it's so over the top. It's like nobody would ever do that. I feel like a good word for sort of getting at what camp is also immature. Yeah. Which for me is like, that connects to, I've talked before, I love like extreme highbrow, lowbrow. Yeah. And I think camp sort of is in that mode of like, you can't like I guess what we're trying to do right now, but you can't really intellectualize the appeal of like, or it's hard to, when something's just stupid and immature. It's like, it just hits you at a sort of gut level. Well, here's how I kind of camp for me works in when the context of what's happening is not trying to depict a reality. Not a reality, like not trying to depict our real life. So it has to acknowledge that we're in a heightened state already. But that's what this film is. I know,
But
like the parents, oh, hello, son, hello, daughter, and the music's playing.
But that's my point, is that there's this line of like the heightened state. They're saying our baseline is the camp, and that's where it falls apart for me. So to make the same example of Evil Dead, the campiest parts of Evil Dead are when Ash is going crazy. And so that works for me because we're in this altered sort of mind scenario where he's losing his mind. And so when he's like laughing with the deer head on the wall and they're like dancing together and like the music, it gets crazy and he's losing his shit. It's all super campy, but I like it because we know that it's kind of inside his head.
Well, what's more,
and we have something outside of that is more of a quote unquote grounded reality.
What's more,
this never has the grounded reality. It's always in this goofy, like over the top. Like that's the baseline is the goofy place, and I think that's for me when camp falls apart. Like if this, no, I'm basically
I want to
saying,
get into this with the what did not work. There is an aspect of this I agree with you.
Okay. Well, give me more things that worked.
Okay.
For you.
Talking about that. I mean, okay, I talked about the opening scene. How about the opening credits? Because I love, like, I think you just helped put me in this movie so much when it's the opening, when there's the blurry, darkened red imagery of the shunting happening. Yeah. And you just kept going, what am I looking at?
Yeah.
What the fuck am I even looking at?
Like slimy, seemingly body parts, but also other things that are slimy and not body parts, but could be, but like what the fuck is going on?
I was going to ask you to describe it, so that's perfect.
Yeah, like bulbousy, skin sacky, like sliminess
and you have
stretchy, and I'm like, what?
Society belongs.
Yeah. I was like, so where are we going?
Okay, well that's something I love that and just your reaction and getting me into the movie, but something I loved about it was how this movie, it sort of tells you everything up front, but just, it doesn't show it all blatantly.
Right.
So it's like, it puts you in this place of feeling really, anticipatory.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Because like we have this opening credits that's literally showing us everything, yet is just obscured enough. And then we have the sounds of the tape of them, like, having the family sex orgy, and you have the weird shunting sounds going on.
That's true, yeah.
And then you have like only like a quarter of the way in, a third of the way in, the bully guy says like everything's like, yeah, man, I slept with your sister and we all we passed her around together, kind of thing. So I don't know. It was interesting how it was very upfront about everything, but that worked for me. Yeah.
I mean, really, for me, the biggest thing that's working is the deception mystery stuff. So, like, the first big one, I guess, is when Billy gets the tape. He hears the tape for the first time, and he hears a specific thing that makes him go, holy shit, I knew it. Like, there's this weird incest fucking culty thing going on with my family and other people in town. And he takes the tape to the therapist, and the therapist says, I'll listen to it tomorrow or whatever. And then when he comes back in, there's this, it's actually gaslighting again, where he's like, I listened to the tape and there's nothing.
He's getting gaslit this whole film. That's kind of what I love about these. I really feel for him,
And so that deception and that sort of, oh fuck, I'm at the mercy of this, of some force, you don't necessarily know who's in on it and who's not. It's the intrigue mystery of that.
Who can I trust?
Right. I really like that because, then the doctor even goes so far as to play the tape and it's totally normal. It's just them talking, and so it's always posing this question of like, fuck, is this me? Am I losing my shit, or like, am I being deceived? And he's always leaning more towards, I'm being deceived, but I can't trust anybody. Nobody knows or will back me because I live in the town where everybody's in on it.
Yeah.
And that construct is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Right? It's the sort of nowhere to hide, you're fucked. Like,
Well,
everybody's in on it. Fight
Yeah.
Club does it.
It gets us so invested too when it's like we have these couple friends who are helping give him the clues or whatever, but then they get killed off or whatnot too, captured.
Yeah, and the other big one is the kid who he's like, we need to meet, and they go to Franklin Canyon.
Yeah.
And he finds the kid with his throat slit in the car, and then runs away, gets the cops, comes back, and it's a different car, and there's no dead body. Like, that's elaborate deception.
Yeah. Which makes it so, which is so, I think, unnerving, because if you're, in his shoes, like we are as the audience, we then, it's that much more proof to us that something is happening.
Yeah.
Yet it's that much more hard to believe for everyone else.
Because, but also for us, the audience, we are always living in this place of, is he an unreliable narrator? Mm-hmm. Which is, I think that's a really fun story construct to give your lead or your protagonist.
Because he is sort of like, he says out loud, am I paranoid or not? I'm not paranoid,
Yeah. And if you are, you don't know you are.
Yeah. But he keeps getting like his support group, his family is exactly, he says at the beginning too, I think in the opening scene, when he's with the therapist, he's like, I don't trust, he's like, who don't you trust, Billy?
He's like, anyone.
He's like, I don't trust my mom, my dad, my sister, you.
Right.
And he shouldn't, but
That's
he's
right.
told like, you know how I hate to give you drugs.
Right.
Just drug them.
So all of that shit, I think, is great. It's good story stuff.
Mm-hmm. Very Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like I said, it's Fight Club has a lot of Fight Club turns into this. There's a whole sort of second act of this type of stuff where it's like, he is a very unreliable narrator. Like, we've been led down this path that there's another person who doesn't actually, he exists, but he's himself.
Yeah.
Right? The Tyler Durden character, it's like, oh shit. But the revelation of that is so intensely powerful. In this, Billy there's no, the turn of what is real and what's in his head is the opposite of Fight Club. It's an external turn.
I don't know. You're talking this up, and honestly, I didn't see it as a big through line. It wasn't something I was never like. I think I was emotionally connect with. Does he think he's crazy or not, or but the whole time I'm like, this is happening. Like, I don't look at him as an unreliable narrator, nor the film sort of playing on that.
You don't. That's interesting. So even when things like the tape or the car and the murder are switched out, you're just on board that he's being deceived.
Yeah, because we already heard with him the tape, and he got it from a friend who's convinced me. I trusted that guy who looks like Mark Holton. Blanchard.
Who's Mark Holton?
He plays Francis in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I thought it was him at first.
Yeah, I was
like, wait a minute, is this old enough for him to look that young?
Yeah.
No.
He's then supposed to be the boyfriend, yeah.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is it did enough to make me wonder that the whole time. But you're right. It does not lean in at all on him potentially being crazy.
Which for me works because it's just like, then you're getting caught up in this sort of frustration, which is like, I think to me is probably the most frightening thing. And I've talked about this for something I'm really sensitive to, but sort of just that feeling of like, like what we've been talking about, you're the only one who believes the truth or can see things a certain way and no one else believes you kind of thing. Like, I don't know,
that's a horrifying place
right,
to
and
be in.
It puts the focus there by sort of not making him an unreliable narrator or playing that angle of it.
Right, that's true.
Which is important to me. Can I go back to camp and some other things? Move on.
Sure.
I think like, okay, and I wanted to say when you use that Evil Dead example in helping to define camp, for me, camp isn't so much that, like the scene you described of the deer laughing on the wall, is he crazy or not? But it's more when he's, you know, when he's being attacked by the torso and like it's clearly an effect. Like it wouldn't be camp if it looked realistic kind of thing. Okay. You know, it's the combination of aesthetics that somehow still work and committing hard to it. You know what I mean? And an example of that in this film, I think, is really in the casting of sort of the surrounding, like the bad guys, essentially.
Are you saying that camp in a way is the acknowledgement of the goofiness?
Yeah, I think it's a love for it.
So maybe another way of putting it is like camp is the music cue of going upstairs. Dun 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 dun. That's camp. Like it's self-referential acknowledgement of the thing.
Right. And which is like, you can imagine Sam Raimi cracking the heck up when they just have this sort of fake torso that they just keep hitting Bruce Campbell with when he's, you know, it's holding the chainsaw and they're in the shed. Yeah. Like,
yeah,
that's that.
Or like when the cat attacks the medium in Legend of Hill House.
Right.
Or Hell House.
Yeah.
Whichever it was. Yeah, because it's like, I think that's really funny shit because we all know it's a stuffed cat. Like, we know that she's just holding on to it and going, ah!
Right.
Oh, it scratched me.
And I think that's an example of camp after the fact, because I think that was, supposed to be scary.
Unintentional camp.
Yeah, so I would define camp as it having to be a certain acknowledgement at the time.
Yes, so it's like seeing the cracks and being okay with it.
Yeah, because
maybe not.
Because here's to further try to find it. What I was going to say is what's camp to me in this is the casting of like the dad, the bully, the sister, and the snooty the other guy running for class president, the nerd with the glasses. Like all of them fit into camp for me in combination with the music where it's like, oh, she's getting ready for her coming out debutante thing, and it's like this music is playing of this like orchestral isn't it all just great, oh father, but then combine that with he's like, you know, the father's oddly massaging the daughter, that like all thing. That crap.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's just over the top. It's like over the top is camp. And then, like, dependent on the intention or the acknowledgement of the over-the-topness kind of is where it lands within the umbrella of camp.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's often, when I was in college, you know, in theater classes, there's a big difference between the actor who's really good but can be big, like big, everything's big, and it comes off really good because they know how to pick and choose when to do that. And then the actor who's completely detached and just doesn't know.
Right.
And they're doing basically the same thing, but the one who doesn't know feels like camp because they think that acting is big movements, whereas the good actor knows that the big movements are motivated by something that's grounded. Well, and so that's, you know.
Well, I wanted to say what specifically worked for me within that is like the casting itself, because I think there's a difference between like who's cast as the dad and who's cast as the mom. Like the mom gets it, she gets the performance right, but the visual of the dad with his like blonde hair and big chin, like that's what puts it into kind of camp for me in a way, or it makes it work for me as sort of this comic book world we're watching. I use that a lot too, but I just mean that as this is not reality.
Well, and I feel like, and I would have to say that this worked for me, I guess, because I feel like nobody was doing the thing. Well, was anybody doing it? No. Nobody in this movie is really doing the actor thing that I'm talking about. It's not like they cast a bunch of really shitty actors who just didn't know how to act and didn't know what they were doing and just were being like bad, low grade, like line reading bad actors. They were directed and doing actually a good job of representing that thing
like apparently the guy
actors.
who played the judge was a legit actor from back in the day.
Right.
And I love the guy who played, I should also mention sort of good casting, the guy who's kind of character actor who plays the therapist.
Yeah.
Like he was great.
Right. And so at first glance, this is actually why I turned the movie off the first time I turned it on. Like 6 months ago or something like that, probably more than that, a year ago. And I just was like, oh no, I can't watch this, the acting. No, it's not for me. And so I just bailed on it. I got maybe 8 minutes in and I was like, nope, gotta go. But in the context of the whole movie, you go, oh wait, no, that's all for a purpose.
Yeah.
And it's not actually bad. I mean, it is bad acting, but it's actors decidedly acting badly.
Yeah, it's like the difference between this and Dolly Dearest, where it's that is trying to be like legit scary and takes on an unintended camp, I think.
Yes. Yes?
Yeah.
So yeah, in actually backing away from it, yes, that works. Mm-hmm. But do I like it? You'll find out.
Some music, I thought, like, where even though that, like, effect wise, I don't know, I thought it was doing some really good, interesting things with having this theme where, like, you can hardly understand, if anything, aside from the word society when they're singing it with society. But it just had this perfect tone for me. Like, if we did remake it, I'd want to carry over a lot of what the music was doing, where it has this sort of like the austereness of like, the orchestra, this, the choir singing, the angelic voice singing, but underneath it is this sort of wombly, gross waltz.
Yes. Which I think is inherently campy.
Yeah, but it's effective, I think, for the kind of horror it is too. Where if you have all these people who are high society but gleeful in what they're doing and how horrible it is, that sort of works for me as this like, this place to come from that's affecting horror-wise to view it all. I don't know.
Yeah.
And some more examples of that, like what the music was doing. I thought there's that opening title song pretty early. The Blue Danube is used at the end. I love that. I think it might have been the Blue Danube or some other famous classical piece earlier where it's pretty short, but it's like, it's used but it's slowed down maybe like 40%. It sounds like 30%. And it just sounds like, it's this, but not right. I love that. And then when we get to the party scene, the pool party, there's like the party music going, but like underneath the mix, there's this weird, like, there's like, I don't know how to do it, but there's a weird synthy oohing going on. That's sort of, again, this sort of contrast of like, okay, it's this teen party, but it's also gross and warbly.
Right. Well, the thing that it kept making me think of is like, it's borderline David Lynch.
Yeah.
It's almost there.
Yeah, some of the tones.
Yeah, but not quite the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then that makes me think, oh shit, like, obviously this director is what had David Lynch done it by 89?
Blue Velvet was his last thing that he did before this, I think, 86.
There's almost sort of a similarity in tone.
It's the satire.
Right. Yeah. So I wonder,
I mean, yeah, David Lynch it comes from I think a more, it's way deeper.
Yes.
The sort of kind of horror it gets at, like, yeah, way more, I don't know, it's a different kind of nerd. This sort of takes it all with a sense of like, you have to have fun with it. That's where it's different, you know, and maybe that's kind of what you were getting at, is that sort of undercuts a certain seriousness you want to bring to this kind of criticism or satire. But for me, it just makes it kind of like, I don't know, it takes the best of both worlds where it's fun and unnerving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that by itself is really just a palate thing. Like, my taste wants things to be more grounded in a real world, but you can go from that real world groundedness into crazy, twisted, whatever.
Yeah.
But I want to have that, you know, oh shit, this could have come from a real place.
Yeah.
Midsommar, you know, does that where I'm like, this is fucking nutso, but like, yeah, I could see that.
Right. It's its own story world, but at the same time, you have a jumping off point.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Mention that a select line, that's a kind of a classic line, is when the new girlfriend, what's her name? You know, Clarissa.
Clarissa.
She remember when she's like seducing him, how do you like your tea? Cream, sugar, or do you want me to pee in it? It's just like, what?
Wait, she says that?
Yeah.
I fucking missed that. What?
There, that was my reaction why I loved it. Horror moments that are not the ending, like that really got to me, was when they're even though it doesn't end up being an actual corpse, they touch the face of what we think is the corpse of Blanchard.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's just like the fingers
cracks.
go right through it. And you're sitting there, why would you touch it?
I'm like, dude, that's very inappropriate at a funeral.
Yeah.
You don't touch the body.
The way the fingers just go through and like green stuff comes out, it's just that got to me in a way a lot of things haven't.
To be honest, actually, you're tipping into the thing that really works for me. The big thing for this movie that works for me is Mad George. You know,
body horror.
Anybody, all the body.
That's
horror.
why I thought this movie would have appealed to you a lot more in the end. Is just purely for the body horror. This is to me like one of the body horror films. You know.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, to skip ahead because we're almost there. Like
the lump on the back when he's zipping up the dress, him seeing her in the shower and being backwards
the
or whatever,
butt and the breasts are in front.
Yeah. I really like that.
Yeah.
The worms in the apple is a little like, yeah, we get it, but I still like it.
It works.
Yeah. What are obviously the corpse one? Is there anything else early that's in that realm? I feel like there is. I feel like there was a moment that I was like, oh shit.
I forget.
I can't remember either.
Well, should we let's move into the ending here?
Okay.
Because I got a lot just for it. I'll talk more about the body horror. So starting with just sort of the whole end sequence with giving him the shot, you know, where they disable, where they all gather around. It's just like the few of them. It's the family and the therapist.
Yeah.
And they give him the shot, Billy the shot. That to me is just the complete, and this continues up through the whole ending. So I'll just say this is like maybe an overall thing that makes me love the ending, or in a horrifying, truly horrific way, disturbing way, is like the utter certitude with which they're carrying things out. Like there's no wiggle room that they're somehow in the wrong, or it's just like the most like dehumanizing thing, like for me, where, you know, it's like,
well, they're all like fired up about it.
Yeah.
Too.
And it's like, I think that's what's sort of
it's like revelatory, like,
right. That's the sort of sick appeal, and why the metaphor works so well is like, you know, we have, because of this wealth disparity, it's true, you know, the rich sucking off the poor.
Yeah.
So to have it, but that's disconnected from reality. Yeah, or, you know, that's it's not disconnected from reality. It's disconnected to their observable reality. When they're sitting there at the country clubs,
right,
like, and they have, you know, the people who make however much money less, you know, working there, or the people in the, you know, in Los Angeles where, you know, you go a block and all of a sudden you're in a whole different world. Yeah. It's
it's a foregone conclusion. I hate that.
Right. It's like to have, but then to have it so we're, rather than sort of pretending to be in the kind of like, what is it in Hunger Games, what do they call the citizens, or the, you know, you have the districts and the capital, right? Yeah. Like they're the capital, right?
Right.
So to have that sort of where they are seeing the lower class head on and taking glee in that, as I said before, and putting them down as like, oh no, we aren't just in a bubble about it. We know about it and are actively taking delight in that disparity.
Well, and unfortunately, this reminds me of the comparison that comes to mind is super unpleasant, which is the slave fight scene in Django Unchained. Mm-hmm. Where like DiCaprio's slaveholder character is auditioning two slaves to fight, and it's for pleasure. It's this sort of like, let's see which one is stronger and bigger and gonna win the fight, and the dismissive joy that he has over this thing, because they're just two underling animals in his mind. Yep. They are not human at all. And this is for his pleasure.
That's exactly, only. I think, that's a good comparison, slavery.
And that is such a, like...
It's to, be considered not human.
Yeah.
But what's worked, again, this metaphor is that they are literally in this a different species. So it says, you aren't us.
Well, make it even more unpleasant. That was the way that the white elite looked at slaves.
Yeah.
They believed them to be a different species.
And I mean, this works so well as the racism metaphor, because think of it, they're all white,
right.
And it plays off that so well in a horror sense, because in order for the melding of the skin to happen, it's like all a white mass, you know, it's all white skin blending together into one uniform blob.
It was a smart lighting choice too, to give it this sort of this wash of yellowy redness, because then everything even more so is blending together into one tone.
I mean, that's skipping ahead, but I love that so much when we actively see the lights changing color and then the blue Danube kicks in. Tim, that's like why I want to own this movie. Like, that's everything to me. It's
just get that scene.
Having that as a sequence. Well, to get the scene, I got to buy the Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, to have that change on screen and then have that twisted version of the blue Danube kick in, and it's just like then their smiles and glee kick in. It's just like, this is everything that only film can do for me. I loved it so much. Okay,
the wet cigar.
Yeah. To keep going in order of the ending, this continues that sort of horror of like keeping the victims in the dark or not considering them as people, where it's like they only tell him anything. It's not like they have some sort of big reveal of like cluing him in willingly. They're just sort of like already in their own world of, this is what we're doing, da 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 da, and they're making, in jokes amongst themselves. Mm-hmm. Like when he answers it, when he asks them directly, what's going on, what did they say? There's no business like show business. That's sort of all they tell him. Ugh. They don't tell him exactly what they are, that they're not aliens,
But are they aliens?
Well, he thinks so, because something else I loved is he's just like insane and calling them, "You alien scum!"
Right.
And then after he gives his short little talk of like, actually we aren't alien, we're not quite that, he just still yells, "You alien scum!" Like he doesn't even hear them.
Yeah.
They are alien scum to him, no matter what. It's all his brain can accept and translate it as. I love that. And then it's called, I think, I watched the Joe Bob Briggs intertitles.
You did?
Of this. I watched this movie twice. I watched it the night when we watched it, and I rewatched it with Joe Bob yesterday morning. But he called that thing that's like the horse cattle loop thing. Yeah, he called that a twitch. Have you heard that term?
I don't think so. Right? I've seen the thing before, but I didn't know that's what it's called.
That's what called. But that is just furthers that, like, talking about dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, it's enough when it's on him, but then when they bring in Blanchard and he has the sheet over his head and that's connected to him, it's like, oh God. Ugh.
Yep. Are we going to get to my favorite part?
Yes. Wait. Hi, I have... still go in order.
Okay, good.
The built-in hierarchy of this too, like, fits into the horror of the society, where it's like the therapist introduces the judge, and it's supposed to be, he's somehow esteemed,
right?
And then play that all up with a cigar in his mouth, kind of thing. I'm getting too old for this. Like, yeah, that there's a hierarchy built into this. Then seeing. To kind of the payoff of these different characters you've seen through the film. There's the character Petrie, who's like the geek guy running for class president. To see him at the party, I just loved that as like that character is part of the society.
Of course, yeah.
That was really fun and satisfying. Talked about them being... Oh, and then just to sort of plant, like, it didn't need to do anything more, but just the line, we got an internship for you this summer in Washington.
Right.
It's like, that's all you need to just sort of turn the satire up so many notches.
Yeah.
Of like, how big does this go? Is it all of government? That totally... it's great.
Right.
The word shunting, and then that's what it is.
What is that?
It's an invented... That's what they're doing in it.
They just made that up. It's
but
not a reference to something.
I love that so much. Like, this was... maybe this is, skipping ahead to things of note, but this was inspired by... the idea of shunting was inspired by a Salvador Dali painting.
Oh, right. Yeah. I saw that.
Called The Great Masturbator.
Of course.
Right? But that it came from this invented place in a way. I don't know. I just love that. Like, and that it's fully, and that they don't just sort of shy away from it. They fully embrace it by having the society members say, like, what they have their sayings. Oh, it's something about the hunt. Get on with the shunt. And they're just using it. And when they first said it, sort of, you're like, what did he say?
Yeah.
But just to sort of, go to the accent. Then, I think now we're at what maybe is getting to your favorite moments here, but one of, like, the effects, you definitely see the effects. It's like, they're still great, but the one towards the beginning that, like, actually got me is when their fingers on a butt and the fingers go through it like it's a liquid, and that sort of just sells what's going on so well.
Right. Yeah, they're melding together. It's fucking weird.
Yeah. And then, of course, we get to the judge going after the Mark Holton looking guy. And, like, I loved Tim. This was something that's in my, like, if you've looked at my, like, old college films and stuff, a style thing I love and share with Brian Yuzna is, like, these shots of the judge and them, like, looking straight on at camera and close up and kind of talking at us. And that's when he goes into whatever he says before. And then when he says, now we'll get to the bottom of this. And then that's the big build up. His hand goes.
I mean, I love a dad joke.
Oh yeah, butthead, and then he's making, like, fart noises too, like with his face.
Yeah. Oh man, it's right on the line for me. It's like I like it and I want to laugh at it, but I'm also like rolling my eyes at it a little bit.
You just gotta get with it.
Well, I got with it when he called his dad a butthead.
Yeah. Right. You mean, way before that became there was the payoff to that. I remember that was so great, Tim. You were just like, butthead? Like, when he's calling his dad, he used the word butthead.
I was like the highest level of pleasantly shocked by this, like incredulously shocked by it in a good way.
And it came back twice, the reference to him
butthead.
saying, yeah.
What? That's what you called him?
But is he Bart Simpson or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but the callback to it, that is great. For me, that's the highlight. If you look at our Instagram, you'll see a picture of me looking at his dad's head in the butt.
Oh yeah, I'll post that then. Even then, when it gets to then, he's being pursued. I mean, that's great that the family is just off on their own, just having their own little family orgy that they can have any day of the week, just because.
What is going on with that
it's
sequence?
Just because it's such true
They're
love.
all just melded together in this very bizarre way, with the hands are the legs and the sister's head is between the hand legs that are the mom's, but the mom has no arms, and the dad is a face coming out of a butt. That whole thing, I was just like, my brain fell apart.
That's why I loved it.
Yeah.
But you have the therapist then kind of pursuing him, who then like turns into two giant hands and gets his Joker mouth.
The fucking, what is up with the Joker mouth?
It's great. But I mean,
I just was like confused at that point.
It's like, well, it's just sort of establishing these rules of how they can just meld and shift. So it just sort of is paying that off. Like,
I feel like they had just watched Batman 89.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, let's just do that thing.
Right. That's why I say it's straight up the Joker mouth.
Freaky. Weird. What the fuck?
And then the judge turning into a full Pizza the Hut flesh blob and has the cigar in his mouth, and it's the twisted circus music playing, and then it's just sort of like it's the full like flesh and bodies with the tendrils between them.
Ooh, you know what else?
Eyeballs in the mouth.
That sequence made
pouring
me think
champagne on each other.
Yeah, like into weird cavities that exist.
That's again just everything to me. That's full.
I'm with that. That scene, that moment of like the progression of that scene really, really reminds me of the kind of demonic sequences in Caligula. There are these like underworld orgy
I haven't seen
scenes.
I want to.
That movie is fucking crazy. It's crazy. I don't even know how to put it. But there's full on like sex going on. It's basically pornography in these scenes. But it has that same sort of thing where it's just like slippery bodies all over each other with like, I think in Caligula, like some of them have like, bull heads and like, you know what I mean? There's like centaur type stuff going on. It's like super crazy. I haven't seen it in like 20 years, but it has that same vibe of just body parts all over the place, twisting around each other, and it's very unpleasant.
What you're talking about, that and sort of displaying orgies like that. It gets at this sort of. I think there's a deep horror in there that's in this of where's the line or the gray area or whatever of when pleasure is taken too far,
exactly,
kind of thing.
Yes.
Like the excess in pleasure,
right?
Because like to then say, oh no, this is taking orgies to the level of bodies literally melding, and so sort of anything can become an orifice. So,
yes,
you know.
Yeah,
so,
an orifice that wants that champagne.
Yeah, so there's a deep. I don't know. It's something really unsettling, that line. Okay, what is too far, people? Like, when does it end?
Mm-hmm.
You know. But at the same time, it's like. But then we get in our paradox loops of but we're here to have a good time. Everyone's doing it voluntarily. Like, it's all consensual.
Yeah.
But it's just sort of this horror of like, is it? When's it? You know, is it ever too much?
You'll know the next morning.
Yeah.
Because you'll feel real weird.
Right. There's always a flip side to it, which these people don't have. The flip side.
That's right.
The yin to their yang is the everyone, the lower society being put down.
Right.
It's their pleasure at the expense of others' pain. Again, the horror.
Yeah.
And how about how he defeated his bully?
Okay. Yes, is this your last one?
Yes, aside from the ending moment. As far as the sequence, yeah. That's what ends it, is the bully being pulled inside out.
Right. I'm on board with it.
It's so good.
Yes.
It was like...
I like his insides.
Yeah.
But they're not human inside.
Right.
So there's that big question.
There are these weird
what the
like
fuck?
sinewy, wormy bits, which
Yeah.
we see at one point someone's just delighting and eating.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty gross.
I mean,
But good.
yeah. Okay. I mean, it's okay. Great. I don't know much more to say about that. If you've
Okay.
seen it, you hopefully have. It's excellent.
If you haven't seen it and you're listening to this still,
Yeah.
fuck. What are you getting out of this conversation?
Well. That leads into, I mean, I loved the ending beat. Like, I think you were saying it didn't come together in a certain way. I don't know if you're talking about the last moment, but
Not exactly.
This was the perfect ending for me, where it's like kind of the best ending no matter what the genre or type of film is, where it's some sort of middle ground. We get the satisfaction of him escaping with his friends and winning this fight, yet the society is still just going and as strong as ever. Like, no one's going to believe him. He doesn't really have the upper hand in any way, aside from what they can do alone.
Not because everybody in a position of authority is in on it anyway, so you're fucked.
So, exactly. So, I don't know, that's just the perfect ending for me for this kind of film, where it's just leaving it off that sort of immediate note of, we've had this big enough sequence to sort of offer a big, satisfying climax, and then we've had that little, then the actual sort of final fracas between the two of them as something to build to. The effect of him pulling him inside out. But yeah, sorry. I've already said that. Just what I already said. It's the thrill of the escape and the horror of they are still alive and active.
Yeah.
Great.
Cool.
Well, should we go on about what else worked, Tim? Because we keep going.
What else worked?
I know. I think you're ready for what
ready.
did not work.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay. Is there anything else I had, Ryan? I hate giving you drugs. You can always trust me. That comes back. You want me to pee in it. Okay, just real quick. It's just, okay, the beach stuff. That's just one of those scenes where it's like, what is this movie? You know?
Yeah.
It weirdly works for me. I don't know why, but because there's so much apparently on the surface that isn't working, and I think that's sort of indicative of like when I first see this film, you're just like, what is this movie? But like, I don't know what I wanted to say except for whatever weirdness that's hard to pin down in sort of the sort of surrounding moments, I guess you could say, of this film. They do in the end work for me.
Like him running into the mom on the beach. This is the first time we've seen her, and she just is like standing there. And
Oh, right. And that mom character. Yeah. So
what the fuck?
That works for me. What that mom character is this kind of that weird, immature, nonsensical Mad Magazine humor, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Works for me. Okay, Tim, fine. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
So I almost want, it's not exactly the same, but I wanted to pull a kind of a Ryan in that, like, the pulling the guy inside out works for me, but it also doesn't work for me because the judge had just put his hand up through somebody. And it's the doubling up of such a intense gag undercut the second time.
For me, it was like that was part of the payoff, as he used this knowledge of being able
But did
to
he
like
see that one? Maybe he did.
Remember, I mean, the whole time they're like, watch what happens.
That's true.
But he could have been running upstairs at that point.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I just remember thinking like I thought I would think I would have liked that solve, like the victory of that, better if I hadn't already seen. In other words,
we should have had a clear reaction of him seeing it when it first happened.
Yeah, it could have been that. It could have also been if the first time we see that, it's just a little different. Like it's one notch less of a version of what he ultimately does. Which I guess it is because he pulls the guy inside out, so that's more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just was like, oh, bummer, because this is the whole thing that, like, the point of actually me being into the movie. It just felt undercut by that double up.
It's weird. So this is totally rhyming it, where it's like, yes, things worked for me that also didn't work for me. And maybe it's the first viewing that didn't work for me, but it was like, I agree. There's just some sort of beats or plot holes or just things to be made clear that would have helped me.
Oh yeah.
Like, the biggest one for me, the only one I really had was like how he willingly goes back home after the hospital, and why do they put him in the hospital in the first place? Why not they just inject him and keep him there? Like, why, yeah. Was it just to declare him dead, to get him declared dead by the hospital?
Yeah.
Why did they inject him and not just keep him there?
That whole sequence is weird. Like, the logic of it is really
I could not.
all over the place.
Again, now that sort of weird thing is something that I just accept and kind of love about it, but at the same time, you know, at a point, to an extent, did not work, so I gotta mention it.
Yeah, it's almost like there was the moment of the friend, you know, finding him at the hospital, and then Billy's kind of just dismissive, and he's like, you're supposed to be dead, and Billy's like, yeah, whatever, and he like jumps in his Jeep and drives away. And I thought what was going to go on is that he was sort of a replaced Billy, like he was a body snatched sort of Billy, and
or that's part of their process, but he escapes.
Yeah, but we got like, I'm like, how did he get out? We didn't get any of it. It's like there's a missing scene or something.
Yeah,
it's really weird.
It does feel like there's a missing scene. Is that like at the hospital is when they make the fake bodies to fake their death, and they need the actual bodies to do it somehow? It's like, what?
Yeah. Because then there's also the moment where the friend goes in and he's about to pull the sheet off of a corpse to see if it's in the... And
that's Billy doing that, yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because he gets caught by the nurse after he talks.
Oh, and that's when he goes, no, 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 no,
that's
no.
the friend who says that, though.
Oh, okay. Wait, man, I'm like mixing these two moments up.
Me too.
Either way, that whole sequence just, it's actually what you're saying. It's like, why and what does it accomplish? Other than just being like... Making
the ending works, just getting us out of the house for a little bit, adding more running time to it. Yeah, I was like, so and I was just sort of, it was funny, his motivation where he goes, what is he? Oh yeah, once he finally gets back to the parents, and like, even though the friend's kind of like, oh, don't go back there or whatever, he gets to the parents and he's like, does he have a knife or whatever, some weapon? And he goes, I want to have a chat with you. And that's when the lights come on and all the society people grab him and put the thing around his neck. But it's at that whole time, I'm kind of like, what is his motivate? Is he's like going to expose them, or is he just kind of like, he's just going to rant at the parents and try to attack them with a knife? Like, what is he doing exactly?
I think this is actually the biggest problem with the movie. Like, regardless of how you feel about the execution of the acting or the directing or the scenes or whatever, but from a story point of view, Billy is... He's weirdly unmotivated. Like, nothing he does really he's not really taking action in any way. He's kind of this passive, just along for the ride protagonist. And it just doesn't work. It works kind of because the movie is sort of this weird thing anyway. So you're like, all right, sure.
Yeah.
But in a better executed or a differently executed movie, you would be like, what the fuck? Like, no, right. This doesn't work. So, like, why would he do that? Any of that?
Well, there's the part of me that's just like, I get down for like the casting of this type of like actor is super 80s hair and everything.
The hair, dude.
And so what I thought the first time, and I'll still think, again, I wouldn't want to change anything, but at the same time to change it to, I think, make it better on multiple levels for what you're saying, as far as, and this is more connecting back to what you're saying about like needing some sort of baseline in order to then jump off into camp.
Right.
is you switch the actors who play Billy and the friend who's like the one who's with him at the end.
Little nerdier.
Yeah. That fits like the sort of more relatable classic 80s character.
Yeah.
Who I think is more the audience surrogate for this kind of film and era of film. Like,
yes.
But Billy fits so well as he's perfect casting as the friend, though. You know what I mean? Like, he's the kind of like the friend you want to convince and bring along for the ride, but he's not very like relatable aside from that. He doesn't really sort of get across an inherent intelligence. He's kind of just
he's like
yelling about things and not really making any sense. It's hard to ever sympathize with whatever his train of thought is, you know? But I don't know, with the kind of more, with the nerdy 80s guy who I think the guy who played the friend would have been perfect. It could have been, we would have had the grounding and a bit more sort of a character where we can have a through line, sort of figuring out this mystery with a lot better.
Well, and the whole idea of Billy not being their actual son and feeling like I don't belong here would work more.
Yeah.
If the friend character, the actor who was the friend was Billy.
Right. Rather
because
than
he
having
would
like
be
just
even
a
more
different...
this sort of disconnected. He's
Right.
not cool. He's not
all it is
athletic.
He's not blonde.
He's not blonde.
No,
right?
in this version,
right.
It's just that he's not blonde. But yeah, have him be not athletic, not popular, blah 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 blah. When they're trying to force Billy into this, like, so he's more popular than the nerd character running for the president, but also doesn't quite fit in. It's like, do one or the other.
Yeah, it's like he can't be the jock popular guy, but also the outsider.
It's like you could go for a more interesting character and have him be like James Franco in Freaks and Geeks kind of thing, where he's like the pretty boy, but also is kind of like clearly the freak too,
right?
An outcast character, the geek freak.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important to the character is this sense of not belonging, right? The overarching theme of like, to be a part of society, you need to fit into this crazy thing that they are asking for. And he's always been on the outside of that, whether he knows why or not. That's his big sort of internal question. He's like, do I belong here? Why don't I relate to my parents? What's going on with them? Why is everybody looking at me weird?
It doesn't, and that when he's asking those questions, it just doesn't resonate with his persona.
Exactly. And his hair.
Yeah, his persona.
That fucking hair, dude. What did I say at one point?
You said amazing or incredible or something, or ridiculous.
Yeah, that hair is fucking, I don't remember what it is.
Outrageous?
Probably. It really is. Holy shit. Did you feel like that actor feels like I couldn't quite pinpoint who, I think he's an amalgamation kind of like Charlie Sheen, Tom Cruise, I mean, 80s versions of these people, like Emilio Estevez, Charlie Sheen-ish, Tom Cruise-ish. He's like, was he on Baywatch or something, this actor?
Yes.
He was. Okay, so I have seen him before. Okay.
He's on 3 seasons, I believe.
Yeah, I was like, I know this dude. I watched some Baywatch in my life.
Of course.
It was on at 4:00 after school. So... yeah, I think that's a big... You know what movie does essentially what this movie is right and really leans on I'm the different one, I'm the outsider, is Get Out. It's essentially the same story in a way.
It's interesting you say Get Out because in this compares stories. I was talking about this yesterday with a friend about Society, just watched it and he's like loved it, and he immediately compared it to Get Out as far as why Society worked for him and why Get Out doesn't. He said,
whoa, okay.
He said Get Out, it didn't go far enough. Like when it introduces these sort of like, you have these rules of a world where you don't really know. It's like, okay, so they're like taking bodies somehow, and like, what's the science of it? Okay, well, in order to sort of not get hung up on those questions, it sounded like he needed it to go a lot further.
Interesting.
To take the horror of it, the extremity, the over-the-topness. Like, what they set up in Get Out should have been a jumping off point for that, where he said, like, a movie like Society actually delivers that in the end.
Okay. I see...
Just to represent
that voice. Yeah, I see where he's going. I think for me, the difference in opinion is based on what we were talking about earlier of, like, I want things to live in this grounded reality. And Get Out does. And if it were to go as far as Society, it would almost break down. I
think, though, that's the challenge.
Maybe.
Is you establish that the reality that Get Out does, then that's what allows you to escalate. Like, I don't know. I agree with him more than I don't, actually. Like, I still love Get Out for what it was, and I think that would have been that much of a risk. But, like, in the end, I think, yeah, man, go bigger.
Well, right. They kept it in this sort of contained thing, which I think serves Get Out insofar as the main themes that it's pointing at.
But, I mean, on reflection, it was still great. It was super tense, Get Out, as far as this... But it was simply a thriller by the ending of him just escaping.
I agree. That is that section of the movie, the escape, is the least satisfying of that movie for me.
Again, in the moment when you're watching it, it's satisfying because it is well done and tense, and the brother getting in and all that. But as far as just what you're doing with the horror, do what you can only do in horror. And, like, make this huge, keep it escalating like Society does and Texas Chainsaw does and all the greats do. Poltergeist with its fourth act, you know?
Right. That's interesting. Okay, yeah, I can see where he's coming from. But yeah, so for me, the point that I'm getting at, I guess, is simply making making your protagonist really, really, at minimum, feel like an outsider, and you can help yourself as the filmmaker by casting that appropriately. Now, I get why they cast him the way they did, because he is a representation of that world as well.
He works as that sort of, what they say is, like what the director said, it being not a critique so much, but like a play, a sort of spoof on 80s teen comedies.
Yeah, commentary.
Like, again, like he's does work for that world, but so do the nerdy types.
Right, because, let's say Breakfast Club, it would be the Anthony...
Yeah, I want Anthony Michael Hall to star in this, not Emilio Estevez's character.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really what they chose. They chose the jock to be the lead instead of the nerd.
Yeah.
And
I'd rather have the jock picking up the slack.
Then when you have the class president debate, it would be the nerd. The lead would be the nerd, and he'd be debating against the dumbass jock.
Right, who is good casting too, the actual jock in it.
Right.
The bad guy.
So, like, that makes more sense to me from a story point of view and to get on board with the character. That's my other big thing that didn't work, is part of why I can't get into this movie is because I cannot relate to Billy.
Yeah.
At all. In any way. Even though I understand intellectually his plight, I can't, like, relate to him. I'm like,
that's where
it almost is like, shut up.
I know.
Like, you're being a fucking, like, a privileged prick.
Right.
Shut the fuck up.
This is where it works and didn't work for me, too. Because as I said, like, I wouldn't want to change it for what the movie is, yet here I am saying, just do this switch, and it would have been that much better.
Yeah. A couple other things that didn't work for me. I get why all of these things exist, but, like, there are wardrobe things that I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, maybe it's just the time and the style.
I feel like that's
his gray suit pants.
All of that was just
are the worst things I've ever seen. They are too long and too wide, and they make his body look fucking shorter than it already is. I mean, maybe I'm channeling my own inner, like, short-leggedness. But fucking hell, dude. He looks so dumpy.
I mean, all that for me is, again, like, that's the...
I'm looking at the poster here, too, and, like, on the poster, it's definitely not him. It's a guy in a tux, and he looks all right, even though the style was pretty bad then. Everything was a little too baggy. But, yeah, it's that thing. For me, it's that line between making it goofy because that's part of the vibe of the movie you're making, and separating the goofy from, like, I think he should progressively become less goofy as a character.
He's learning or something as
and
he's going.
And aesthetically he doesn't.
He's growing somehow.
Right. And I think that I want that. That would help me get in with him as a character if I was watching him kind of, even just visually, like if his hair was less fucking ridiculous.
How he treats his other girlfriend is horrible.
Yeah, like we're supposed to get on board with his sort of struggle or whatever, but they kind of undercut our ability to do that by not having him as a character progress in some way, even if it was just visually. I would be like, at least that's something. But it just doesn't happen. And then that sort of brings, like, to the bigger one of the payoff of that final thing. I think it's just that that scene is amazing, but I still am like, but what? We've spent the whole movie wanting some sort of, like, answer to the question of whatever the question is, like, what the fuck's going on?
But we see it fully. This is what's going on.
But I don't know what is.
But that's the horror. That's why it's good, like, Lovecraftian horror. This is honestly, it's probably next. I mean, I haven't seen a lot out there, but this is, like, up with them as the best Lovecraftian horror. The horror is, it, like, got to me so much, the line where he's like, no, we aren't exactly aliens. We're something else. Sure. That's the horror. Oh, the something else, to think, we don't want to walk away from a horror film going, oh yeah, so at the end they are just that. We want to say, they're this weird,
I agree,
flesh melding different species somehow. Like,
I think maybe what it is that I don't think that Billy gets it.
I know, he just seems so dumb at that. He's just like, oh, we aren't aliens. You alien scum!
That's probably what it is. I need to see him go, this is, what would it be? Like, something.
I need him to call them alien scum. And again, if this was the nerd character, would probably be the reaction. They say, oh, we aren't that. And then we just see a sort of a look of horror that's beyond words, of just scream, whatever.
Yeah, or some sort of statement. Like, I guess killing the other dude is the statement. I don't care what you are. But, like, even just a physical statement of, like, I don't know, like, I want him to burn it down.
Yeah.
And he just runs away.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's the running away of his character.
They could have made it more of a final fracas of, because it's weird. They're kind of like subduing him, but they don't seem too concerned about him. Like,
I just had a crazy thought.
You
want to see your lead character, especially in this kind of context of, like, you're fucked kind of no matter what. I want to see a version where he can't get away and they are starting to shunt with him.
Yeah.
And that gets interrupted by the outside world in a way that makes them have to fall back in line with their sort of the appearance of everything's normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or I just think use that girlfriend character is one of their species, but then goes on Billy's side. Like, make a bigger thing of the friend coming to a rescue in the police outfit, and then the girlfriend who switches sides. Like, use all that versus just them kind of, okay, he won his freedom, let's get out.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a space in there that could hammer home both the idea of, like, they're kind of everywhere in the elite world, but they still have to keep up appearances to something, to somebody. And that
there's the new cop who's working for them or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I think becomes problematic because then it's like you would have to kind of introduce a different character, and that changes the movie. But I just think the instinct is, how fucked up would it be if right at the moment of him being completely fucking like he's gonna be assimilated or die or whatever he's gonna do, that gets interrupted and he's just left there and they all just go back to being normal.
Right.
And they're like, I'm sorry, officer. Like, what's the issue?
I think when we're talking about the remake, let's introduce the new cop character who then, exactly as you're saying.
And then Billy has to be like, the despair that you would see of him being like,
how do you articulate what just happened?
Exactly. He'd be like, they're
alien scope.
The thing, there's nothing he could say, which is indicative of the bigger problem. We, the non-rich, are powerless to the rich, right? That concept would be so much more like tragic, I guess.
You're right. And then to keep up with the post-aughts trope, kill the cop then and there, kill the new cop.
Yeah, exactly. And then he can have his fight and get away, but yeah, it's what does Blake Snyder call that? It's sort of the Hightower surprise part of the third act, where it's like, you think it's the second time everything is fucked.
Yeah.
And then that turns you in during the third act. It's sort of like if you break the third act into its own 3 acts, it's the break into the third act of the third act, so to speak, if you can wrap your head around that. But yeah,
no, it could use a little more structure. The ending, it's just kind of like, okay, he like runs upstairs and kind of gets away for a bit and then gets trapped again. And it's just kind of like, okay.
Yeah. I guess there's a lacking catharsis in like sticking it to the society that I think I want, I guess. I don't know if other people want that, but I want it. So not having it is where I think I left going, yeah, okay.
Things of note yet?
Yeah.
You want to do it?
Yeah,
all right.
No, I'm going. We had sort of touched on the broad things of like, it's just a lot of it's a taste issue for me.
Yeah. All right. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
Already mentioned, inspired by the Dalí painting, great masturbator. Mentioned Billy Warlock was on Baywatch, but he was also on before this 5 different soap operas, apparently.
Nice.
I just had Clarissa's mom written down, who's the character we already touched on. I mean, just that in like what is like, talk about you saying what is, using the horror of the ending of what's going on, and that's a good thing. Like, what is the mom?
You know what'd be cool is if in the ending, is the mom one of them? It's like hard to know.
She's the Clarissa's mom, who is one of them.
Right. But she's like...
And Clarissa's sort of deriding her, like, use your brain for once.
You know what would have been really fucked up and really Lovecraftian is if in the end if Billy was like about to be shunted and whatever, because that mom weird character is there and we don't know what the fuck's going on. What if she just turned into like a fucking giant like Cthulhu like squid monster and started fighting with them, and it was just like, it's like,
that would have been great, Tim.
What the fuck?
Because she's sort of a mark of oblivious indifference. She doesn't see things as good or bad. She just is a weird hair fetishist. So she could just sort of, she could have transformed to this big Cthulhu thing and ripped off all their scalps.
Yes. That, I can't even tell you how on board I would be for that.
We got to remake it, people, if you're listening.
Shit.
Let us write it. Clarissa's, Clarissa, and then who played Clarissa, Devin De Vasquez. She was a June 85 Playmate.
Oh, okay. I see that here, yeah.
And she, more recently, she helped those affected by Hurricane Katrina by creating Devin's Kick-Ass Cajun Seasoning and offering it through her business,
nice.
Devron Enterprises.
It's interesting that
gossip,
we didn't see her. Oh yeah, we did see her boobs.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say it was interesting that we didn't. It's a thing of note. We didn't see the Playmates' boobs.
celebrity gossip. She dated Sylvester Stallone at the time of this film and dated Prince before that.
Ooh. So she's got a type?
Yeah.
No.
Actually, I always thought Sylvester Stallone was more of an intellectual than he lets on in his archetype. Like the way
I think that's true.
Like when you hear him speak, his quotes, the fact that he wrote Rocky and how he got it made. He's short. Yeah.
Prince is short.
Yeah. Short intellectual types.
There you go.
Where's my Devin? All right. Co-writer.
Just slip that right in.
Co-writer Woody Keith grew up in Beverly Hills. This is what Joe Bob was saying. So first, later he said he thought it was horrifying. Woody Keith said that these people, who are like the bad guys, were based on people he knew. But then he also said, which is, it's fun and fine, just visually or whatever. That's who he is, how they carry themselves. But he let on. I wasn't sure how much he kind of meant this was legitimate, but that he literally believed that some of these people were aliens. Maybe or maybe not.
He's down that lizard people rabbit hole.
One of the co-writers. Which, you imagine, Tim, if this is your whole world, your brain must go crazy places to try to justify how and why people are doing this.
If your brain is a brain that is not prone to just the assimilation of the or indoctrination or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
To that way of looking at the world.
And coming off with the writers, so the original script is a completely different movie, but when Yuzna came on board, it was just a blood sacrifice cult ending. That's what it built to, versus a shunting.
Thank God they didn't do that.
Right?
Because that's, at that point, 89, we had gotten 50 of those movies.
But Brian Yuzna was like, no, I'm just more interested in the sort of the Dali influence, just sort of the weird and inexplicable. So he went with
that's
that
cool
direction, which I think we're all thankful for. Billy Warlock, he had
that's a fucking crazy stage
his
name.
Name's Billy. In his character's name is Billy.
Well, they just needed to make it easy for him.
Yeah. Right, because apparently he didn't know what was going on, and Brian Yuzna would just respond with, doesn't matter, on set. Whenever.
Well, that showed.
Right.
It's sad because
it worked for the direction they went with, even though it wasn't our favorite, is he was this sort of bumbling moment-to-moment guy.
Look, I'll give this dude a lot of credit because he's working really hard in this movie. He's trying really hard to make some performance and make invest in that performance. It contextually comes off as really dorky, kind of cheesy. That
alien scum line is perfect. He delivers it with all his heart.
That's right.
But
they did not help him with the trappings of the character around, the hair, the costume, et cetera, et cetera.
Billy Warlock had a bit part in Halloween 2, the original. And his dad, it was probably because his dad was a stunt person who played Michael Myers in Halloween 2.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Shit, dog. You know that we're going to get the third Halloween 2?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Except that we're in the continuity of the first one, so technically the last one we watched was Halloween 2,
I
but
heard
they didn't
that
call it Halloween 2, and now they're going to call the sequel to that Halloween 2.
And this gets even more confusing because the Halloween remake, the non-Rob Zombie, the new remake, Halloween 2018-19.
The one we watched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that retconned everything except for the first one, apparently.
Correct.
Right? But apparently, this is rumors maybe, but that they went and tried to get Paul Rudd to reprise his role. Was it from Halloween 4 or 6 or 5 or whatever?
What?
Which would mean they would be then retconning their first one because the first one is supposed to be a retcon of everything else.
Right.
Does that make sense? That they're retconning something by... They're retconning that it retconned.
Yes.
Anyway, that's a
holy
side note.
Fuck, my brain just shattered.
That's why I wanted to share that. The mansion that they shot at, we were guessing it was Beverly Hills, but it was actually in Pasadena because that's where apparently the bigger mansions are.
I can see that.
And that's where that mansion itself was sold to the city of Pasadena owns it. It's probably why they're able to shoot there more easily or whatever.
I bet I know the area. You know the Huntington Gardens.
Yeah, so
right by there.
It's known as Millionaire's Row.
Yeah,
that area.
Yeah.
And so that house is specifically the headquarters for the Pasadena Tournament of Roses.
Oh shit!
So it's this perfect it's like the metaphor again is all perfectly built in of like the Pasadena elite like annual event.
Yep.
Is where this takes place.
That's fucking crazy. My
favorite quote from Joe Bob in this kind of works as an out of context quote, at least for me. He said about this film, "This is why Americans love mansions." Maybe that does need more context.
What? Yep. I couldn't agree more. Right. This is it. This is why.
Just talking about the whole like going off on the he was like he was just cracking up the whole time about this idea of like, tell me about these Los Angeles orgies and like the sex cults. He was just like obsessed with it all, and like he like Pasadena being the Uber. He's like, oh, and people in Pasadena, the rich in Pasadena, they don't even see themselves as being in Los Angeles. They're in Pasadena, you know.
It's kind of true.
Yeah, exactly. That's why Americans love mansions. Oh yeah, I think he was kind of going off on like how there's all these different rooms to go off and have sex in and get up to trouble, you know. I had all those polls I read earlier about the tone of it. I mean, I'm just going to my list. Do you have anything? You might have some stuff.
No, we've talked about all the same things, or you've talked about the things.
So then I have the development of society here is so Brian Yuzna. This was the first film he directed, and he got the leverage to make it because he had the rights to Reanimator 2, which was his one producing success.
That was my
but it was after he had been trying to make a film with Dan O'Bannon, which was called The Men, which sounded kind of similar to this, where it's about it's kind of like this meets that's the John Carpenter They Live, except it's a world where all the men are like creatures or aliens.
Okay.
And the women fight,
cool.
which sounds great.
Yeah.
But that fell through. And then so they were hired on to do the team Brian Yuzna and Stuart Gordon were in pre-production on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids with Disney when Stuart Gordon got sick or something. So they both left. And then, or once he left, they kicked out Brian Yuzna and turned it into what they did. But they were apparently up in pre-production building the sets in Mexico.
Shit.
That still became, the movie a lot of us loved as kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The movie did not do well in the U.S., but this is quote, in England, it was a huge hit and got great reviews. In France, it was a hit. In Italy, people have written PhD dissertations on the movie. It's very interesting how audience took it in worldwide. And then he sort of goes on to say, like, which I'd agree with him, is he thinks, now in America, it'd do better, rather than people were more attached to that ideal of like, no, this is the American to work up to the social elite and anyone can do it. Why would we ever criticize or disparage that? But then you have like the French and the French, Revolution and elitist. Here's actually his quote on that. Do you want to hear it?
Sure.
For the filmmaker, he thinks the problem was purely political. The themes he was exploring simply didn't resonate in the U.S. like they did overseas. So now, the filmmaker's quote, I think it's because we have this fantasy of the American dream that if you work hard, you'll succeed and become rich. You're not supposed to resent that. You're not supposed to resent what the rich have because if you work hard, you can get it. In American society, we even admire criminals who are wealthy because we think they must have done something right. In England, they live in the punishing class system throughout history, right down to a language barrier, so they had no problem with the movie. Italy was similar, France was similar. Oh yeah, this is like what it is. I mean, hey, they're the guys who invented the whole revolution against the aristocracy. What do you think of that? Do you think that's true?
Yeah, and I think that if you made this movie today, it would be well received in the States.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. It's ripe right now.
Yeah. Crazy.
I was excited to learn they were developing a sort of sequel / reboot. And do you read about that at all?
No.
It sounded like the premise would be sort of starring a girl who gets caught up in like the sort of Hollywood club scene or something, or I don't know if that's connected to the film business or more like actual clubs or just sort of this weird social elite, more specifically in Hollywood. But that the idea is like, okay, well, once you get into the club, there's the VIP, then there's the VVIP, and then it's sort of where does that just a play on that?
Yeah.
It was called Society to Body Modification. That was the title.
I feel like I've read that somewhere.
And then only did I, when I'm reading the review for the Blu-ray that's come out, did I read there's actually a released, and this comes with the Blu-ray if you get it, a comic book sequel called Society Party Animal. I want to read it so bad, Tim. I want the expansion of this world. I would just want to read it so much.
Get into it. You can find it.
All right. So how would we remake it, Tim? My biggest jumping off point is what the story is at its core is, again, I want to say I loved it how it is. This is just now we're different people than Brian Yuzna. How would we do it? But what I attach to most is how sinister the story is and these idea of the rich doing this to the poor. And I would want the movie to feel sinister.
Yep, that's exactly what I would want. There's the movie that kind of comes to mind that lived a bit in that, and stylistically, I just sort of like the aesthetic, is Brick.
Oh, yeah?
It's got this, it's a noir. So I guess what I'm saying is I would want to make this a modern noir, right? Like in the same sort of tone that Brick did. Because Brick has that same sort of thing of like, what the fuck is going on?
I definitely think
who
more
are these people?
John Carpenter-y too, where it still has the satire, but it's very grounded, like urban kind of feel.
Finding that balance of the noir and that Brick does well, and what you're saying, that sort of gritty John Carpenter-y self-acknowledgement almost.
Mm-hmm. And then the unabashed showing of Cronenberg once we get to the ending.
Fuck yes. And Cthulhu the mom.
Yeah, the mom.
That
we found our
I can't, and not CGI.
No.
It'd be all the fucking most practical, like squiddy arm shit going on.
Apparently they only had a day to shoot all the effects stuff.
Oh my god.
If that says something.
Oh my god. That sounds like a nightmare.
So yes, make that the majority of the shoot is make that all the coolest stuff possible.
Yeah. The tone would just be, for my taste and aesthetic, would need to be much, much
And you could see why I'd want to keep up the music, how that still works, that melding of like how the music was working for me in that sinister sense.
But do you mean the instrumentation, like the synthy sort of vibe?
No.
Okay, because not
the Pee-wee's Playhouse things,
right.
But when it's like the warbly distorted Blue Danube,
sure,
all that.
No, that's
stuff.
great. Yeah, I think it would be good.
And even the theme. It's...
Would you change the location? Would you keep it Beverly Hills kind of, or is there a better one?
You
could be in DC.
Being from Marin, I would be interested in that angle.
Oh. I've lived in New York City. I could see you doing it there, but it's not.
Marin is sort of all an enclave in itself. You have like some area that's like, not as nice, but I do think LA, as we mentioned before, because the different neighborhoods are stacked up right next to each other. Yet Beverly Hills is kind of also fenced off, just enough that it does lend itself well to the story. It does,
but I now thinking about it, I think if you pick kind of no-name American, not small town, but like medium-sized town in the middle of the U.S., like not the middle, but like somewhere not a major metropolitan city, you can kind of shrink the story down but still accomplish this stuff. Because like I'm from Rochester, New York, which is a pretty small city, but it definitely has all of the same sort of structural, like socioeconomic structural things that this has. But it's more like a lot of other places in the US, whereas LA is really just LA. And I think maybe getting that kind of shrunken down, less of the like, there's so much that comes along with putting it into such a recognizable city that I think if you washed that away but still kept all of the structural sort of, bits of it. Because like in Rochester, there's a town my town, even within my town, there was like 2.5 miles east was a mansion row. But like my neighborhood was this very basic sort of, it was called Home Acres. The neighborhood had a name.
It's hard because I think you could argue it a lot of ways. This is the challenge. What we're doing right now is figuring out, because what you're saying is set it more in kind of like, anywhere America, how this exists everywhere.
Right.
I could still argue for the Beverly Hills setting, because I think there's something specifically cathartic and eerie about seeing they almost represent the sort of ultimate golf club members, the exclusive club members. It's something about like the California types too. But my argument for it now, when I was thinking about setting it in Marin, is where I come from, is there's this, you have like the bubble or whatever, they're definitely, it's a really expensive place to live. Mm-hmm. Yet it's like a lot of them though, it sort of identifies though, San Francisco as being progressive. So I think that's almost a more sort of modern day poignant thing to sort of show if there's any hypocrisy that we sort of are yet to fully embrace or acknowledge that exists in the San Francisco where it's like that sort of, even more than LA, is indicative of the wealth gap and the housing crisis going on. Well,
and what we really miss in this movie, and I'm not sure how you integrate it, but we do miss the counterpoint of the poor.
Yeah.
And so another place that I've been that you could use that has the really, really wide spectrum of like super rich and like dirt ass poor is Martha's Vineyard. Mm-hmm. Where it's like that whole island exists off of the seasonal rich people showing up.
Yeah.
And then like on the off season, it's like a lot of people are scrambling to find just a place to live that they can afford in. Like you have to go to the middle of the island and live in a little shack.
That'd be like if it was reversed, then I think that works. So then you have the island that's isolated of the rich people, but you're saying it's opposite. But like, imagine if Marin set, you have the Tesla drivers, like, getting off on just the homeless people they pick up on the streets of San Francisco or whatever.
That's pretty twisted.
Yeah.
Which
is what you want.
Fuck. The other question is, do you make Billy still a family member, or do you make him an outsider that's come into this world?
I think you play up. I think that it could be cool to just sort of do what felt like was there, but more missed opportunity, make it more clear with a well-drawn character of how his whole life he hasn't felt like he fits into this family somehow. Mm-hmm. His question of, I think I'm adopted. That's a sort of good jumping off point for all that, I think.
Yeah, I guess the reason I ask is because I can see a version of this where Billy is us, the audience. He's just like anybody, right? And he gets a job or takes this job that seems like this great opportunity to like step into a higher sort of class and make money, and like maybe that will lead to opportunities that could be good for him, and he's getting that voice from somewhere else.
I think we make it a little, plant the seeds more of what exactly the family is doing in relation to him. Mm-hmm. Are they trying to somehow get a human to be on board with their kind, or are they just raising him to be the idea, like kind of what they say in this, where he's like the perfect specimen that they somehow get off more on shunting.
Right.
Because it could be like, oh, Billy, we have the internship for you this summer. Or it could just be like what I think works for this, where they are keeping him at a distance, like from the sister. or
Well, and-
compared to the sister.
And I guess, I mean, maybe part of why we've seen this before, the version I'm talking about, I mean, Midsummer essentially does that, right? It's the outsider, the skeptical outsider, or sort of, an outsider that thinks they need this or that this will be good for them kind of thing. Also, what was the other example I just thought of? Shit. I don't remember. So, yeah. I don't know. I think
I feel like all good questions that
Yeah.
I'd love to have the opportunity. Let us remake it, world.
Yeah.
Before Ryan, before the actual original filmmaker does.
Yeah, exactly. Cool, dude.
All right. Let's put a bow on society. This was a good, I think, episode 50.
Crazy. 50.
Thanks to Dr. Williams. I hope you're happy.
Thanks, dude.
Let us know if you have anything
Or
to add.
dudette.
Huh?
I said dude or dudette. I don't actually
And I said,
know.
let us know if you have anything to add. We'll be sure to report back to our listeners. So now we have our recommendations.
So I went De Palma, and I watched Blowout,
You went De Palma.
and it is good. It's got a lull in the middle, or sort of second halfy lull kind of thing, but it's pretty fucking cool, man.
Cool.
Don't be turned off by John Travolta being the lead. He's good in it. And it's got that thing that you're kind of talking about of like, you don't necessarily want there to be like a bow on the end, which it was cool. It was satisfying.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen it.
It's on Prime, I think, is where I watched it. So yeah, that's mine. It's fun.
Cool. I will recommend Dead. Not a horror film, but I'm just going to, just looking at what I've recently watched. Anything I enjoy, I put it a heart next to on Letterboxd here. I watched on the Criterion Channel. I think it was late 60s. Yeah, 69 was the year. It's called Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. And it has Natalie Wood in it. And it's worth seeing just for her. But even nowadays, it feels so relevant at sort of just exploring the ideas of open relationships. And this sort of idea of like sex being like carefree, but then also like there's this whole other side to it but it's not I don't know. It's really, really interesting and digging into these, I think, that are sort of went away for a bit, but are even sort of more present now again, or curling these sort of questions. And it's it really took me by surprise at the end, sort of with the ending of like, oh, this is like a good, this like really good film.
All right.
I recommend it.
Cool. Well, are we doing hat pulls?
Yeah.
Is it your turn?
Tim, I don't know. I think it's...
Did you pull the Japanese movie that we couldn't get?
I think you pulled that.
I don't think I did.
Yeah, you're right. Your turn.
It is my turn. Okay. I'm so excited. This feels like...
Which, again, we will watch when it becomes available.
A long one.
One Cut of the Dead, yeah.
It's not a long one. It's just on a long piece of paper. It's called Sisters from 1973.
Oh, man. This is one I've really been wanting to see.
I love 70s.
This one's supposed to be good. My friend Nick was recommending it to me.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, where can people find us?
They can find us at Gmail and Instagram at Dismembering Horror, and on Twitter at DisHorrorPod, and on Ryan's portfolio website, RyanMcDuffie.com, McDuffie.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. And I'm kind of all over. It's all under Tim Aslin.
Sorry, and I thought this was right, but I wanted to confirm it before I said it. But you just mentioned Brian De Palma. Sisters is a Brian De Palma film.
Oh shit! Is it? Cool.
Thought
what
I knew
a
that,
coincidence!
But I just wanted to confirm.
Great.
With Margot Kidder. Yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I haven't seen it. Okay, so you said where they can find us. Great. Dismembering Horror, blah, 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 blah. That's what we're called. It's where you can find us.
That's right.
At DisHorrorPod on Twitter.
Yeah.
At Dismembering Horror on Instagram. Dismembering Horror at Gmail.
Mm-hmm.
Email us.
So many ads.
This was a recommendation.
That's
Or
right.
No, sorry. Our RecommenDEADtions are what we recommend, Ed. This was a recommendation of what we watch.
Well, I think you could call it a recommendation from a listener.
Sure, you're right. Okay, and we watched it. So,
There's your incentive.
and we talked about it, and it was a good episode 50. I love talking about this with you, Tim.
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, in closing, thanks for listening.
And we will see you next time.
Goodbye.